who are you? And maybe more importantly, who are you going to be? That's probably one of the biggest challenges we all face in modern life. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the real science behind how we build our identity. We're moving way beyond simple labels to get at the deep psychological processes that are really going on. Let's get into it.
Have you ever just felt totally paralyzed when you're facing one of those huge life choices? Like you're just adrift? If you have, you're definitely not alone. That feeling is a core part of the journey to find yourself. And believe it or not, psychologists have been studying it for decades.
All right, so to get our bearings here, we've got to start with the foundational work of a psychologist named James Marcia. He came up with this really powerful idea that most of us tend to fall into one of four main paths, or statuses, based on how we tackle those big life questions.
Now, Marcia's entire framework really boils down to just two key things. First, you've got exploration. That's the active part, the searching, the questioning, the weighing of all your options. And second, you've got commitment. That's when you actually make a choice and decide to stick with a path. How you mix and match these two things, well, that's what defines which of the four paths you're on.
Okay, so first up is what's called identity achievement. And for a lot of us, this is kind of the goal. Think of someone who, maybe considered being a doctor, then did a deep dive into graphic design. But after all that searching, they committed to becoming a teacher because it just felt right. They did the work, and they found a path that feels truly authentic to them.
Next, we have the moratorium status. This is the searcher. These are the people who are right in the thick of exploration. They're trying on different hats, maybe switching college majors, thinking about different careers, but they haven't landed on a final commitment just yet. It can be a really exciting, super creative time, but it's often defined by this lingering feeling of uncertainty.
Then there's foreclosure. So in this case, a person has a really strong commitment, but, and this is key, it was made without a lot of personal exploration. A classic example is someone who joins the family business or adopts a certain political view just because it's what's always been expected of them, without ever really stopping to ask, hey, is this actually the right fit for me? And finally, we have diffusion. This status is all about a lack of both exploration and commitment. The person isn't really searching for a path, and they haven't settled on one either. They might just be a bit disengaged, or maybe they're just not troubled by the big questions. They're essentially just drifting.
But here's the thing. These four boxes are a great starting point, but they don't tell the whole story. I mean, life's more complicated than that, right? Modern research, especially from psychologists like Kuhn and Lix, has shown that identity isn't some static label you get. No, it's a dynamic, ongoing process.
So this newer model splits the whole thing into two really powerful cycles. First, you've got the commitment formation cycle. That's all about choosing your path in the first place. But then, and this is so crucial, you have the commitment evaluation cycle. This is about constantly checking in to see if that path you chose still actually fits you.
So how does this actually work? Well, the formation cycle kicks off with what's called exploration in breadth. Just imagine starting college. You're looking at all the different majors out there, everything from biology to art history. You're just casting a wide net. Then, at some point, you make a choice. That's commitment making. You've declared your major.
But wait, the process isn't over. Now that evaluation cycle kicks in, you start doing exploration in depth. You're reflecting on your major, talking to professors, really seeing how it feels day to day. And hopefully, this leads to identification with commitment, which is that amazing feeling of, yes, this is totally me. Or maybe it doesn't, and that's okay, because then the cycle can just begin all over again. It perfectly shows how identity is this living, breathing thing.
And what's so cool about this more detailed model is that it helps us solve a huge puzzle that has stumped researchers for years. It's called the exploration paradox.
So on the one hand, we know that exploration is absolutely essential, right? It's linked to personal growth, being open to new experiences, and eventually getting a strong sense of who you are. But on the other hand, study after study shows that exploration is also tied to things like anxiety, depressive symptoms, and just painful indecision. So what gives? I mean, if this whole process is supposed to be so healthy and so important, why does it so often feel stressful and confusing and, let's be honest, just plain awful? It's a question that really gets to the heart of what it means to struggle with your identity.
The answer, it turns out, lies in realizing that not all exploration is created equal. There's this hidden dimension we haven't talked about yet, a deeper kind of doubt that just changes the entire equation.
So here's the crucial insight. The problem isn't that we search for who we are. The problem is how we search. There's a productive way to explore, and, well, there's a destructive one.
And researchers gave this destructive way a name: ruminative exploration. This isn't that curious, open-minded search for answers. No, this is getting stuck. It's worrying, it's brooding, it's endlessly spinning your wheels on the same questions because you're scared and anxious, and you're not making any real progress.
And boom, this solves the paradox. All that anxiety and distress, it's not caused by healthy exploration, that adaptive search for options. It's caused by this ruminative, worried style of exploration. This also explains why people in that searcher or moratorium status often feel so distressed. They tend to be high in this unproductive, looping pattern of thought.
Okay, so this is a really fascinating psychological model, but why does it actually matter in the real world? Well, it matters because the path you're on has profound real-world consequences for your life. The research here is incredibly clear. As Lux and his colleagues put it, a lack of consideration for the future, which is basically the definition of that diffusion status, is associated with the highest likelihood of engaging in present-oriented, hedonistic, dangerous behaviors.
And if you want a statistic that really drives this point home, check this out. One study found that individuals in what they called the carefree diffused status, so the ones who are untroubled by their lack of direction, they reported dangerous drug use at a rate 2 to 3 times higher than any other group. The stakes here are incredibly high.
And it goes way beyond just risk-taking. Your identity status really impacts everything. For example, people in foreclosure who inherited their path might avoid burnout, but they also report feeling way less engaged and enthusiastic about their work than people in achievement who chose their own path. It literally shapes your entire experience of life.
So I guess it all comes down to this one question. When you think about your future, are you exploring with curiosity and openness, with a real desire to grow? Or are you stuck in a loop of worry and fear? Understanding that difference, that might just be the most important step you can take on the path to finding yourself.